Okay, Hare Krishna devotees. So, welcome to this joint program between the ISKCON Vaishnavi Ministry and the Grihastha Vision Team. So, this is our Valentine's Day edition, and we are excited to welcome Uttama Prabhu and Partha Prabhu here with us from the Grihastha Vision Team. Haribol Prabhus.
Hare Krishna. We're honored to be with you today.
Hare Krishna.
And we also have Bhakti and Tiffany here, who is my co-interviewer or co-chairperson for this conversation.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees.
So briefly, I just want to introduce our two dear guests here. Partha Das and his wife Uttama Devi Dasi were married in 1971 and initiated together by Srila Prabhupada in 1973. They have 3 children. Oh, and I think this other grandchildren needs to be updated. There's a recent addition to the family.
7 now.
Yes, 7 grandchildren. Partha Prabhu helps his, and with the help of his wife, spent 19 years engaged as the head pujari in Vancouver, Canada. Uttama Prabhu also served in the Gurukul. After moving to Sharanagati Dham, a rural community not far from Vancouver, Uttama Prabhu served as the president and in other board positions for 20 years. Together, they ran the youth Bhagavad Gita groups. Seeing the high divorce rates in our communities, they decided to train as marital educators. So since 2004, they, along with others, became the founding members of the Grihastha Vision Team. They have traveled globally doing marriage seminars and mentor training. Post-pandemic, they offer online mentorship to many couples for premarital education, do marriage counseling, and conduct online seminars. And they are the co-authors, along with other Grihastha Vision Team members, of Heart and Soul Connection, a devotional guide to marriage, service, and love, available at VaishnavFamilyResources.org. So thank you both so much for your amazing service to our Vaishnava community. And we're so excited to be having this Valentine's Day conversation, because of course everyone goes crazy over this silly little commercial holiday. Krishna's the original Valentine. So I think the very first question that I think we wanna kick off with is, why so much anxiety about this holiday? Is this a good thing or a bad thing? Like, how should we calibrate ourselves relative to this big day on the calendar?
I think one of the first things is not to get an anxiety about it. just take it in a relaxed way. Even if you're happily married, it can be a little bit of a stress, What to speak of if you're in a relationship where it's a bit tumultuous or not going well, that can be a stress. Some people have broken relationships, and it might make them feel sad about their broken relationships, or maybe they're not even in a relationship, and that can make them feel sad. So, it's okay to be sad. You just have to process it, feel it, kind of own it, and then think, well, what's the deeper meaning here? Like, what is it that I'm needing? What am I wishing for? Maybe even what would I look for in a healthy partner? Any of those things. And, of course, Valentine's Day, we can morph it into, doing something loving for our kids, for ourselves, for, some random person on the street, anything, make it what you'd like to make out of it.
Yeah, we all have people in our lives who are very important to us, who we have affection and love for, and we can express appreciation for those individuals also at times like this. And that's an important thing to do in life, is to appreciate those people in your life who do add value to your life and who you actually love.
Do you remember? I don't think we've ever celebrated Valentine's Day. And we've been married 50 years. I remember when our oldest daughter, got married and they were living with us, and the son-in-law comes home with some flowers and some chocolates for his daughter, and I go, "Ooh, hey." He says, my mom told me I should do this. You know?
That's really sweet. I think, and I think that's a good testament that, successful marriages aren't dependent on, what you do on one single day in the calendar.
Yeah.
In fact, successful relationships of any kind are built on small little positive interchange exchanges done often. It's not the big things, it's all the little things.
For a
Um,
relationship just to remain stable, research shows there should be at least 5 positive interactions to 1 negative. And a healthy relationship might have 20 to 1 or 50 to 1. And it's inevitable there's going to be, some kind of negative occurrences, because we're still struggling to become free from the modes of material nature. So stuff happens. And when we can have that cultivation of positivity, appreciation, those, as Uttama was saying, those small acts of that add value to each other's relationships, it creates what you call a large emotional bank account. So if you had, $100,000 or 200,000, even South Africa, rand in the bank,
Rants.
and you make a withdrawal of 500, it's not that noticeable because you have a big balance. If your positive balance is quite low, like 7 to 1, 5 to 1, or 4 to 1, you have a withdrawal, it becomes very noticeable. So it's very important for keeping your marriage healthy to cultivate those positive activities.
I think, I think that kind of leads us into the theme that we wanted to discuss today of red, yellow, and green flags. So like as you're saying, if your positive to negative ratio is too low, that's a red flag that I need to stop and pay attention to something here. But I think I just wanted to introduce this concept a little bit, because I think especially the yellow flag was a new one when we were discussing this. But I think red flags are obvious. This is like this is the red zone. You need to get out of here. Like stop. Like don't take a chance here. Like proceed at your own peril. And green is just like clear to pass, easy to this is the safe zone. And then I think the yellow flags are conversations. Like something is like something maybe seems a bit odd, and I need to stop and ask myself what's going on here, and have a conversation with my partner or with the person I'm considering to be in a relationship with, and say, what's going on here, and see how you can, especially navigate for you as individuals. And I think there's a lot of situations where like things maybe aren't as black and white.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
For sure, and that's why it's really important not to jump to conclusions. Stop, take a breath, and get curious. Find out what's going on behind the person's thoughts. I think that's the motto of the yellow zone. Be curious.
yes, be curious.
And if you think of that in terms of, bhakti and devotional service, the red zones, in actuality, we could refer to those as Vaishnava aparad. Literally, when we have negative interactions, and more or less we're committing some kind of aparads toward each other. We're behaving in very unhealthy ways. And the green zone is when we're having exchanges of loving devotion and service and kindness and compassion and empathy. And the yellow zones are when we notice there's a red zone, we make that effort to bring things back into focus towards the green zone. And that's a very important point, is what really makes a marriage successful and also enables us to advance in spiritual life excuse me, is the effort we make to bring those disconnections back into a state of connection. That's what keeps our relationships moving forward and healthy. And if we just become complacent, generally things don't just remain where they are, they tend to gravitate down. So it is important to have that consciousness. You're looking for areas to improve in. It's like when you're driving your car, there's not many instruments there, but you probably do look at your gas gauge sometimes, and you're looking to see if the oil light goes on. And if you don't pay attention, you're either going to run out of gas or your engine might seize up or something. So it's healthy to be aware of that kind of yellow zone when you get there, so you can make the effort to improve.
And so can, oh,
Oh, go ahead, Tiffany. You go ahead.
thank you. So could you possibly give us some examples of what would be red flags or green flags or yellow flags in a normal relationship?
I mean, one red flag would be a continued behavior, like if she asks me a question and I'm reading a book or something and I don't even respond. I don't say anything, I don't look at her, I don't acknowledge. That would be a bit of a red flag. It's sometimes referred to as turning away. You know, your partner makes a little bid for connection. You know, isn't that a beautiful bird outside? And I don't respond. And maybe every now and then you might not respond, but if that's a continued pattern that you don't acknowledge your partner, you don't engage in conversation, it tends to create a very big disconnect. So that's definitely a red flag.
And that one's not so readily noticeable by people.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting. One researcher found that when he watches couples, if he sees that, he knows within 2 years they're going to be divorced.
Oh, saying.
So I think some of the other red flags are the real obvious ones, like coercion, any kind of abuse, really selfish, those kind of indicators that one isn't really capable of being in a relationship.
Red flags can also be if there's ongoing unresolved problems that continually come up in highly conflicted manners, and it's just like a car spinning the wheels, stuck in the snow or stuck in the mud and never progressing. That's a red flag. And kind of a hidden red flag can also be if couples just sweep their problems under the carpet and don't deal with them. Because you can sweep so much under the carpet, but eventually there's a big lump there and you're going to trip on it. So it's important for couples to acknowledge that, okay, we have a problem here, we're not dealing with our issues, or we have a problem here, we're highly conflicted. You know, how can we deal with our conflict in a way we feel comfortable if we're not dealing with it? And if it's too escalated and volatile, well, how can we deal with this in a way which is constructive and non-confrontational and respectful? Because conflict is normal in this world. It's normal. But it's how you deal with it. So it's very important to realize, you know, that yellow zone, okay, there's things we have to improve in our relationship. What knowledge or skills can we do to literally bring those other exchanges, which are either in the modes of passion or ignorance, into the mode of goodness, so we can deal with them in a healthy way.
So if you're looking to get into a relationship with someone, you do want to see if they're overly self-centered, if they have really poor emotional control, and if they just have very few relationship skills. Those are kind of, you know, red flags if you're looking to get into a relationship.
Curious, as you mentioned, you know, being selfish, and there's also this, you know, discussion of, you know, the importance of being a little selfish and taking care of yourself. So what is the difference? You know, what is the balance between the, you know, a healthy sense of taking care of yourself and putting your needs at, like, or healthy boundaries in putting your needs first, and actually just being, you know, really like selfish and inconsiderate?
I think it's important to be introspective. There's a nice example of that in Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Kardama Muni, he performed very introspective meditation, austerities for, was it 1,000 years? 1,000 years. And that the fruits of his austerities matured, and Lord Vishnu actually appeared before him and asked him a benediction. And Kardama Muni, the Lord asked Kardama Muni to take a benediction. And what Kardama Muni asked for, he said, "My dear Lord," he indicated to the Lord that he still saw he had this desire to enjoy. And he said, "I think I need a wife of like disposition." So
Vishnu didn't say, "You're in Maya, Prabhu."
Yeah. So that took a lot of courage. I mean, there's the Supreme Lord, and he's offering, anything. He could have just granted him liberation, but somehow Kardama knew he wasn't quite ready for liberation, although Prabhupada actually refers to him as a liberated soul because the Lord appeared before him. But he gave this example that he needed to experience the Grihastha ashram and work through that, and then he eventually became liberated. So it's very important that we're introspective to actually see what we need to progress. And also it's very important in our study of Shastra. I think a lot of times we miss the importance. The first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, actually in the second verse, it's described how this knowledge, it's reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. So it's not just, I want to get this knowledge for me, but it's actually the knowledge I acquire should be meant to benefit those around me. And if we can keep that in our vision, it's not just about me, but it's about we. That how can I use this knowledge? How can I try to understand my needs in a way that it doesn't just benefit me, but it's also going to benefit my partner, my family, my community?
So my short answer to your question, Karuna Shakti, would be selfishness is we don't care about the other person. But self-care means we care about ourselves enough that we can make ourselves the best person to be able to share nicely with others. So it's not exclusive. We do need to look after ourselves, otherwise we can't be helping to others.
I'd like to, if we could go back to something that Partha Prabhu shared in that pastime with Kardama Muni about him wanting a partner of like disposition. I thought that that was an interesting part of his request for that boon. And I'm wondering what other things that we should look for when we're finding a partner.
It's interesting in that section. Srila Prabhupada describes how that young men and young women, they would be matched generally by their parents, and they would use astrology according to taste and character. So the parents would actually do all that homework for you. They would find someone who they saw had similar character and similar likes, and so basically those two words, taste and character, kind of boils down to the essence of what kind of compatibility you're looking for. And it is important that, if we're looking for a partner, we don't have that kind of support system from our parents or even our community nowadays. But it's important for us to understand our own nature and character and needs, and then also to understand our spouses,
potential
nature.
partner.
Yeah, potential partner, what their character is. Because sometimes especially the way romance is portrayed in the media, very kind of passionate unions, you can become matched to someone just on the basis of passionate physical attraction with no consideration of character or taste, and then marriages become extremely difficult because there's a low level of compatibility.
So I usually suggest starting with seeing three main areas: your personality compatibilities, same natures, likes, tastes, moods, your values? Do you have similar values in
Yeah.
life? And do you have like a similar desire for lifestyle? So you see, like some devotees, they love to like always be traveling, and other people just like to stay in one spot. Or there's so many. Can you? So
Sorry.
many different ways that people want to live their life, and it's kind of hard to live a lifestyle that's not really you. It might be exciting in the beginning, but afterwards, it's becomes fairly difficult. So we usually suggest that if you think about maybe your introvertedness or your extrovertedness or your lifestyle choices, if you think about a continuum between -5 and +5, so say +5 is really extroverted, and say -5 is really introverted. So where are you on that scale? And so, you put an extrovert with a super introvert, life is going to be kind of tough after a while. But, if one's like -2 and one's +1, you probably work it out. You'll grow from the differences in the other person. But the other is just going to be such a strain that neither one of you can be you.
Sounds like, before you can even have this conversation with another person, you need to have a conversation with yourself, and a really honest one
Right.
with yourself about where
Mm-hmm.
you stand with these things.
Mm-hmm.
Like Kadama Muni, he spent 1,000 years having a conversation with himself. um, we don't have 1,000 years, but it sounds like we really need to start. That's a really important starting point.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. Our son was going traveling when he was in his teens. I said, "So what you looking for in a girl?" He goes, "Mom, I'm not looking for a girl." I said, "I know, but if you were, what would you be looking for?" And I got him to like sit down and like name off some things that he liked. Sure enough, by the end of the trip, he'd found a girl. So, it's a good thing he kind of knew what he was looking for.
If moms know their sons better than they do. Tiffany?
So I was wondering, thinking in terms of the red flags and the yellow flags, and the green flags, particularly when we're in a red flag zone, what kind of skills would we need, or how could we kind of move things into the yellow zone so that we can eventually get to the green?
Slow down.
Okay.
You see, sometimes when we're in the red zone, we don't notice it because of those endorphins. That kind of, they say love is blind. And it's because you're on a chemical high. You've got dopamine and
Oxytocin.
oxytocin flooding your brain, and you can't necessarily think very well. You just see the similarities and the good things in the other person. So that's why we actually need to take a little bit of time and get to know quite a bit about another person to see if we can actually be able to trust them, if we can be able to rely on them, to see if we should commit. So there's no way you're going to know the proper picture in less than 90 days. Because people can cover over who they are and just show you their best, but after about 90 days they're starting to slip into their real self, and things might just start popping up. So it's not that immediately you gotta like ditch them when you see one thing you don't like, but you want to kind of like note it and see, oh, is this a pattern? Is it coming up all over the place like that? So I think just slowing down things can really help.
And at the same time, it's also important to understand that there is no such thing as a perfect marriage or a perfect match. And we all have some idiosyncrasies, and we all have our own little bit of weirdness in us. And that's just the unique nature the way Krishna creates things. And so when you're looking for a partner, you have to find someone that you can accept their weirdness, and they can accept your weirdness. we're all certain.
Because you're getting a package
you're
deal.
getting a package deal.
So you have to see what you'd like and what's the negative things that you can tolerate. Some negative things you can't tolerate and some you can. Because you know you're going to get some negatives, right? So pick your
We're all
negatives.
a little we're all a little crazy. It's just your crazy and my crazy makes them good crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, in terms of this, self-introspection and compatibility, and as you mentioned, like the difference between infatuation and getting carried away by the hormones, and slowing down to see if there's some genuine connection. I'm just thinking, there's a lot of other tools that are available outside of our Shastra. And, like we hear about the 5 love languages and, other like psychological tools. And, as devotees, is it a good idea for us to use these kind of non-Krishna conscious, tools? Like, is it appropriate for us?
I have a garden, and I use tools. I use a shovel and a rake and a rototiller, and those tools can be used in Krishna's service. And Srila Prabhupada actually describes, I think it's in the first canto, 5th chapter, one purport. He's talking about psychology and science, different sciences. And he says, when they are used solely in the service of the Lord, they factually become Hari Kirtan. So those, as you call them, tools, if we utilize them for that process of, self-introspection, to become better persons, to weed out those yellow flags, those anartas that are in our heart, then it actually becomes, as Prabhupada said, Hari Kirtan. It actually becomes a great asset in our spiritual life. So it is important for us to utilize those tools. If we have some need and they are available, it's very important. And especially in today's age, many people suffer from different kinds of traumas, traumatic experiences, difficult childhood upbringings, and those experiences can actually complicate life
And relationships
later in your life if they're not properly processed. So it is very important. It can be very, very valuable to utilize those tools to overcome those kind of
anartas.
Literally, yes, psychological anartas that become imprinted in your brain.
So anything that you use to progress in spiritual life, we take it. If you're going to be overly obsessed with it and start taking the material aspect as the all in all and forgetting Krishna, then you've gone too far. We just have to find the balance.
It's the nectar of instruction, niyamagraha versus niyamagraha.
Right.
In knowing what to accept that's favorable and rejecting what's not favorable, or being overly attached on either side, is this understanding the principle of yukta vairagya, what can be used in Krishna's service, and engaging it.
For sure.
I find it.
And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta also adds a caveat to that. He says if something can be used and you throw it out just thinking it's like mundane or whatever, you're a fool. If you could actually utilize it to advance in spiritual life.
Yeah, it's interesting because you mentioned anartha nivriti, and it sounds to me like a bhakti relationship is finding someone who you can help each other get through anartha nivriti and get to the stages of nishta and ruchi together.
Yes,
And
exactly.
if you have any illusion that it's going to be anything else, don't bother getting married.
There's this a joke, Partha Prabhu.
I was going to say, if you think you have no anartas, you're probably not a good candidate for marriage. And if your partner also thinks they have no anartas, they're probably not that good a candidate. So like you're saying, if you both realize we have work to do and we're going to do it together.
What's your joke?
Oh yeah, so there's this man, he goes to a sage, and he's like, I really want to improve myself. Well, how do I figure out what's wrong with me, what my weak areas are? And the sage says, are you married? And the man is like, yes. And the man is like, sage is like, go to your wife and point out one thing that's wrong with her, and she will tell you everything that's wrong with you. And there you'll have your list. There's nothing like a close relationship to bring all your narcissism to the surface.
And that's actually very true. Maybe the other person will point them out to you, but you will find them popping up in yourself. They may not happen in your other casual relationships, but when you get in deeper connected relationships, those deeper narcissisms in your heart actually start to surface, and then you're forced to deal with them. And so, a lot of marriage is just dealing with that stuff that surfaces, and it's so good that it comes out. And so, while it's hard, it's a huge benefit, Grihastha ashram, that you get that chance to, deal with all those anartas.
Like a practical example too, in a different way, is you're going to marry someone that you're compatible with, and at the same time you're going to have differences. And when the honeymoon stage wears off, you start to notice the differences and they start to annoy you. Well, that's a point where you can learn how to practice tolerance, which Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu describes as something which is very essential if you want to chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. So in marriage, you're actually given an opportunity to practice that kind of humility and tolerance and patience. And when you have children, you also get immense opportunity to practice a lot of patience.
For sure. If we could just get back to the subject of tools, because I've been reading through your book, Heart and Soul Connection, and one of my favorite sections is actually communication. And I was looking at, you have the tables on one of them titled how we undermined communication, and then a couple of pages later, it talks about empathic listening categories, and I found those very interesting. So I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about those and about the subject of communication and relationship.
Yeah, it's essential part of our Vaishnava practice is Rupa Goswami's loving exchanges, two of which are to reveal your mind in confidence and hear in confidence. And it's the other exchanges, like we give gifts and receive gifts, and as Vaishnavas we have totally mastered the art of accepting prasadam and giving prasadam. But hearing in confidence and revealing in confidence, like I often ask people who are doing seminars, how often when you're listening to someone, they're talking to you, when you're listening, do you have a dialogue going on in your head about how you're going to reply or how you're going to defeat their point of view? And if that's going on, are you actually listening? No, you're not actually listening. You're not actually giving your full attention and full presence. And sometimes we have this fear that if I take my train of thought and just put it on some sidetracks, and if I listen to you, I'm going to lose my train of thought. But it doesn't happen. You can have faith that you just parked it there. You can be present, with your friend, your spouse, whoever it is you're talking to, and listen attentively and make them feel understood, even though you don't agree. You can say, I totally understand why you think that way. I may think differently, but I can understand how you can feel that. And then they feel connected. And then you can take your train of thought and explain to them. And it's very interesting that generally what couples are fighting about, it's not the in-laws or money or so many different things. They're fighting because they don't feel understood. And they're fighting because they don't feel loved. And we feel loved when we're understood, which is completely in line with what Rupa Goswami is referring to in the loving exchange of revealing your mind in confidence and hearing in confidence. That's a loving exchange.
So people don't usually feel understood when we throw back those, I think it's referred to in the book as roadblocks to communication. So if we're judgmental, if we're shaming, if we're, I don't know, what's some on the list there?
Sorry.
That's okay, you closed the book. I thought you had it open. So
Threatening,
anytime, what was it?
threatening, advising,
Yeah,
preaching,
yeah. Oh, you should just do
evaluating
this,
approval.
Prabhu. If you didn't eat so much, you wouldn't be so tired. That's a real. He comes to me, oh, I'm so tired. Well, he didn't eat so much. Yeah, okay, he's really going to open up and tell me why he's tired, you know? So, you know, first first plan of action is zip your lip and just come forward with your heart. Oh, be with your curiosity. Oh, how long have you been tired? Or are you worried you're sick? Or, you know, just with the curious questions.
And that's very related to, emotional intelligence, being able to be empathic, understanding the facts that the individual is telling you, but also the emotion attached to their experience. And research also shows that when couples are actually solving problems, it's not so much on the basis of the specific facts in the situation, but they tend to solve the problems based on discussing each other's feelings on the issue, and that's um, how things become solved. Just like today's world with the internet, it's not creating peace and tranquility in this world because people are just throwing these facts and figures back and forth. There's no empathy. There's zero empathy on the internet.
No
Prabhu,
relationship.
There's no dialogue. There's debate,
Mm.
Prabhu,
and therefore we see
I
what's going on
the
in the world.
when the moment you say couples are solving problems by talking about their feelings, there are a lot. I can just hear all the women chirping up. There's no way I'm going to get my man to talk about his feelings. They don't know how to talk about their feelings.
Well,
Actually, there is.
yes, can I say that?
He didn't used
No,
to talk about his feelings, but I just started listening
Mm.
and asking him questions, and they started coming out. So we start with, I want him to listen to my feelings, but you could start with listening to their feelings.
and also, if you tell your significant other, and so we're talking about ladies trying to get their uh, male partners to open up. For men, it's a lot easier for men to receive the message instead of saying we need to talk. If you can say we need to connect.
It's more
Can we
doing.
have a few minutes just to sit down and discuss connecting? Because men and women approach connection in different ways, and if both the male and the female can understand that, it makes it a lot easier. Because men also, they are emotional, although culturally emotions have been very much suppressed in men for a long time. And it's actually very, very problematic for men. And that's one thing that ladies can do for their husbands and wives, is to be able to help them to open up emotionally. But if you just tell your husband, we need to have a talk about emotions, he's going to freak out. But if you can say, can we sit down and talk? How can we connect in a more meaningful way? And ask him, you know,
Makes you
what
feel.
helps you connect, and tell me tell me what that's like for you. What does it look like for you? What does it feel like for you?
Again, with being curious.
Yes.
See, that's kind of where the five love languages come in. It's when you learn that there's different love languages that people speak. Maybe yours is like words of affirmation. When he tells me he loves me, I feel loved. But maybe his is acts of service. When he's going to work, when he's like, he carries the groceries in for me, that's how he's showing love. So we have different ways in which we express love. And if we can understand that with the other person, we're not so judgmental. And plus, we can see the love shining through.
And also, there's a dynamic that sometimes separates men and women because of their different natures. Um, men are men are less emotive, and men tend to be very oriented to solving problems, and women tend to be more have more of a strong emotional need, the need for emotional connection. So it's a very common pattern in relationships. The woman approaches the husband; she wants to express some emotion, and the husband, what he's hearing through his logical style of thinking is, here's a problem I can solve for her. No problem. I can fix that. And he'll give a solution.
And we go,
She didn't want a solution. She just wanted some empathy. So she gets frustrated. He sees her getting frustrated by his sincere attempt to solve the perceived problem.
That we didn't want you to solve.
He becomes bewildered. So he just tends to like, I don't know what happened, you know.
I better shut up.
and it becomes an ongoing pattern that she's approaching for emotional connection. He tries to solve this perceived problem. She says, "You'd never understand." He said, "I'm trying to understand. I can't understand you." And then he stops talking completely because it never works.
Or he gets angry because he's frustrated.
Yeah. And so she starts going, "You never talk." And literally it's a pattern that's been labeled as pursuit withdrawal. And that can actually develop into a situation which is a precursor to divorce. Mm-hmm. And that can be rectified if they can just understand the difference in their natures. The woman needs emotional support. If the woman can understand that she just has to let her husband know that, no, it's not actually a problem. I just need you to just kind of understand what I'm going through.
Just
right
sit there, go, it must be terrible. Just follow my script. Oh, okay. That's easy.
And if you go to the Vaishnava,
that's all I have to do. No problem.
Vaishnava family resources, the script for men to follow when the wife comes to them with a problem.
Actually, my husband has a flyer on that for men only. It gives the formula for that.
Well, again, in the table in the book about empathic listening, gives some really wonderful categories of and even examples of how to listen empathically and how to respond in a way that shows that you're interested and that you care and not that you're judging or so Karuna Shakti.
What I was also kind of going to in my head when we're talking about this importance of communication and how we're communicating is communicating our needs. And where I went to in my head was, understanding what are our fundamental needs. Because I think there's a quote by Srila Prabhupada where he says, affection is a symptom of life.
Yes.
And I think sometimes we end up going, a little bit too austere or renounced in our relationships, and we don't have our fundamental needs met. And if we've done some introspection and we know, okay, these are my fundamental needs, how do we ensure that we are communicating those in healthy ways and getting them met, and our partners reciprocating in healthy ways?
By switching our complaints into requests. Because when our needs are not met, we tend to be frustrated, and so it comes out as a complaint. You never shut the cupboard doors. He doesn't. But
well, I never used to because
okay, we won't have a fight here.
Nobody responds to complaints. You need something, you complain. You actually get less of what you want, because especially if you complain to man, when we hear our significant other complaining, it tends to make us feel inadequate and withdraw or become angry. And the job you're trying to get done is not going to get done. But as Uttama was saying, if you can
request,
say it, express it as a need, and especially how that need will add value to your life, it clicks. And very practically, it worked for me, because she was complaining for years. I'd help with the dishes, but I'd always leave the cupboard doors open. She just asked me to put away the dishes. I did that. So I was like, I did my job.
Didn't ask him to shut the doors.
And it never clicked.
He doesn't see that they're open.
No, it just actually did not register, even though she's saying it. And then one day she just came out and said, when you help with the dishes and you put them in the cupboard, she said, if the doors are left open, I'll look there later on, I'll kind of see some clutter, and she said, it just makes it seem like there's still so much work I have to do, but if you close the doors, it's hidden.
I can feel peaceful.
I said, I get that. It's easy. Okay, close the door, no problem. Still forget, but I kind of remember. So it is important to say how you can add value to your spouse's life. So we have a need, and whatever it is, but if we can express to our spouse, we're not just giving them a to-do list. I need you to do this because I need. If you could do this for me, I would feel. You can just fill in the blank. That it would help me feel
Supported
it would
or
add
loved
it would
or
add value to my life in this way if you did that, because ultimately we do want to add value to each other's lives.
and when they do it, if we reinforce it, oh, thank you so much. Hey, you shut all the cupboard doors. I just noticed. I feel good.
and and appreciate what your spouse does, and don't always expect things to change instantly when you begin to express a need. There was a very it was turned out to be quite a famous article a journalist wrote on animal training. And so this lady was going to write this article on how they train animals, and she's studying
Dolphins or something.
dolphins and monkeys, and they can get monkeys to ride skateboards. So how do you get a monkey to ride a skateboard? It's like a big, pretty big task. And so what she discovered was they bring the monkey and put the monkey in a room with the skateboard, and if the monkey got close to the skateboard, they'd give him a peanut. You got a little closer, they'd give him 2 peanuts. So this is going on a little bit every day. One day the monkey sits on the skateboard, they give him a banana. And then one day he sits on the skateboard and the skateboard moves a little bit, and maybe they give him 2 bananas or something. And somehow by that positive reinforcement, one day, here's a monkey riding a skateboard because they just gave him this positive feedback.
So he always had this stack of laundry behind the bedroom door.
So what the author of the article said, her husband was always just dropping his laundry everywhere. And so she said, okay, I'm gonna try this technique. And so one day her husband dropped his socks, 3 feet closer to the laundry basket, and she went and gave him a big hug. And after a few days, he realized what was going on. They had a big laugh about it, and he started changing his behavior. So it is true, if you complain, it doesn't work. But if you give some positive reinforcement, say, yeah, this is really helpful for me. I'd really thank you for that. Because we want to reciprocate in those kind of ways. It's natural. But complaining is very detrimental. So that's the last thing you want to do is complain about your needs.
Yeah, I can hear a lot of women thinking, okay, so I need to figure out what's the equivalent of a peanut and a banana for my husband or for my partner.
Try some oats.
So I think also what I'm wondering is what level of difficulty or at what point should it become a red flag to you that this is actually not healthy for me, like where you suppose you're trying or you're communicating and your needs are just not being met. What's the red flag that needs to go up in your head?
Well, first let's kind of start just by saying in a relationship, there's always going to be a certain amount of give and take in a relationship. But in a healthy marriage, that will balance out. Sometimes ultimately you want to collaborate and do something that's, we both totally agree on. This is working for both of us. And sometimes it's going to be some give and take. And the healthy attitude is we're both willing to look after each other's needs. And so it's a bit like flying a plane. It's called the attitude, the position of the wings. So if you have a healthy attitude, if you're flying the plane properly, it's going to go back and forth, but it's going to be level. If the attitude is a bit off, if one spouse is always demanding their needs are being met and neglect the other spouse's needs, then the attitude is unbalanced, and it's like the plane would crash if that would happen. So if you're in a relationship that you feel like your essential needs are being ignored and unmet, that's very unhealthy, and you probably need to find some ways to be able to express that constructively. Sometimes if those patterns are very ingrained, sometimes family counseling can help that, can get the other person to understand. But it is unhealthy, and it can actually be abusive if your important needs are not met in a relationship.
So if you're seeing lots of complaining, lots of defensiveness, if you're seeing that stonewalling where the other person doesn't want to deal with it, and if this is turning into having a little bit of contempt towards each other, those are super big red flags. And you want to try to catch those at their first emergence. If, however, you've kind of been letting it slide, and most couples wait 6 years before they look for help when they're having difficulties. I would definitely recommend you get yourself some skills. If any of those red flags are starting to pop up into your relationship, that, complaining, that stonewalling, that defensiveness, and especially any kind of feelings of contempt, just think, okay, I got to respond better in these situations so the conversation and the it doesn't start going downhill. So either get some skills to overcome them somehow or other, or go to some counseling or get some help from somebody, because if you don't do something, they're going to you're going to end up in a really difficult situation.
And thank you for sharing that. I think often as aspiring Vaishnavas, we tend to kind of struggle with how much we should tolerate and what humility truly means. And sometimes it's hard to kind of navigate for ourselves, where we should draw that line or those boundaries that you were speaking of earlier, Karuna Shakti. So thank you. I really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
I think especially not just a red flag, but red flags and flashing lights is, in that kind of a situation, if you feel you can't be who you are, if you feel like you're walking on thin ice and at any moment you could do something that's going to cause your partner to like erupt in anger, and that would be a very significant red flag that you're in an abusive relationship. And sometimes, I don't really like to talk the subject of abusive relationships, but it is a reality in today's world. And one difficulty sometimes is gradually one partner's sense of self-esteem can gradually be eroded through like continually being criticized and undermined, and shamed, or the abusive person says something, they're going to do something, and they don't do it, or they did something, and you say, why did you do that? And they say, well, I never said that, or I never did that,
or it's because you made me.
And the person receiving that abuse eventually begins to doubt themselves. Maybe I'm just crazy, and they can actually lose complete touch with their own sense of self, and that's
sad,
very bad and very damaging.
And these are some things that like they start kind of popping up in small doses, even in your early dating stages, when you're just getting to know each other. And maybe what are some of the very subtle things that you could pay attention to? There's just be like, that should give you some pause, like, because we tend to kind of brush over things, or they're having a bad day, or make excuses.
That's okay. Someone has a bad day once or twice, but when it pops up more than once, we need to cultivate full respect relationships. So as soon as somebody says something to you that isn't respectful, like it's demeaning, it's a put down, it's a judgment, you just need to say, I'm sorry, but I don't take treatment like that. Would you like to rephrase that? If they're, just angry and they don't know how to control themselves when they get angry, maybe they don't mean it later. They come back and say, I didn't mean that. They're still doing it. You just have to learn how to walk away and only come back when they can have a respectful dialogue with you. And if you start that right away, then you can see if the person's capable of changing. You just don't accept it from the very beginning. You don't say it meanly. You just say, well, I'm sorry, but, I don't accept that kind of treatment or being spoken to like that or whatever. I deserve respect. So you nip it in the bud.
I think also, paying attention to how they treat other people.
For sure.
Yes.
Because that maybe right now they're on their best behavior with you, but how they treat other people, eventually they'll be treating you like that. When the endorphins wear off.
I think something also, sometimes we feel sorry for people, or when we want to give people the benefit of the doubt when we first meet them. But I also noticed like something where when a person talks about past relationships and the ex is always the crazy ex.
Red flag.
Yes, it's like there's no ownership of any like bad, wrong behavior on their side, or even like on past jobs, like, oh, it was always my crazy boss, or who never appreciated me.
Yep.
Like they're always the victim in
Yep.
situations.
That's definitely a red flag. You want to see how they treat other people.
How they talk about other people, because one day you'll be the crazy ex that they're telling someone else about.
And so often you see people, oh yeah, his ex was just like this and like that, and she tries to warn you. You don't believe any of it, and the next thing you know, you're in the same situation.
I want to give Tiffany a chance here, but I just also wanted to go to the other extreme of the, because you see the guy who's maybe a little bit of a jerkish sometimes, but then there's also the situation of love bombing, where these guys who come off so charming, they're like this, he's like the knight in shining armor, like, I mean, he's just too good to be true. He's so considerate, he pays attention, and really notices, you had like, you're having a bad day and no one else would have noticed, and and he seems like, oh, this guy is great, and then poof, he's gone. Like, think that, like, how do you spot the love bomber?
Well, that's such
Well,
a
over time, you're going to find
yeah.
out he'll have disappeared.
Yeah. Or if he does stay over time, he's not going to maintain that. His real side will show up after 3, 4, 5 months. So that's why it's important to take time in getting to know someone.
Because usually, if somebody's like too positive too quickly, they don't actually know what love is. And it is a little bit of a sign that there even may be abuse coming later. So you do want to like slow down, because it's almost inappropriate to put that much on somebody they don't know that well. So you can see they have inappropriate emotional controls.
You two probably aren't old enough, but there was a famous song in the 70s. It was, "Hello, I love you. Won't you tell me your name?" Don't even know you.
I think it's also like what it sounds like, you're saying is also is watch the level of investment, and how quickly are they investing, and also be careful to invest a little, and maybe also, like, with the, like, to test people in different scenarios, because they may be really great in one, but then when you put them in something in other types of scenarios, they may not be as shiny. The gold plating starts to come off.
That's why you do have to look at their family of origin, their how they react in different situations, their, like you say, their general skill set for relationship skills, things like that. You have to look at the whole picture, not just one side.
Um, we actually met this girl. We heard about the story prior to meeting her. It came up when we talked about her example at a different seminar. We didn't know who she was or her name. But one of our friends was at one temple where couples were meeting, and they didn't really have any chance to associate besides just in the temple. And she asked for some advice. And our other friend told this young lady, well, you should go somewhere in some different situation, because you see how they react in different surroundings. So this girl and her prospective boyfriend went for a train ride somewhere, and the train didn't stop at the station. The door would, or the stop, but the door would not open. So he just got super angry and started smashing the door. And you said, wow, that was the best advice I ever got. So we told that during one seminar once.
The girl afterwards just, that was me.
So, and we don't want to make people fearful in their pursuing relationships, but you should be cautious. I won't even say cautious. I'll say you should use your intelligence. You want to love not just with your heart, but also with your intelligence and your perception. You want to be a little careful.
And those are interesting points, because I think that oftentimes, people will overlook things because they have almost a desperation to find a relationship
Yes.
and to pair up with someone. And so they kind of and so I think that also goes back to what Karuna Shakti, you were mentioning earlier about self-awareness
Hmm.
and being realistic and mature in what you're looking for. So I think there's also a need to be able to be comfortable without necessarily being in a relationship. I think that that's something that's important
Hmm.
to be looked at as well. Particularly,
It's better to be by yourself than to be in a bad relationship.
absolutely.
And also doing that kind of self-care and being introspective and knowing what you need and what your values are, um, that's going to make you more perceptive to what's going around in the world, to the people you meet, and it's going to greatly increase your likelihood
Meeting like-minded people.
yeah, of meeting like-minded people and avoiding those who could potentially be very, very bad mates. So it's important to be introspective. And we talked about it in the beginning. Kardama Muni, like he was really introspective. He was really internally honest, and he got what he desired: a beautiful wife who was
Beyond his expectations.
beyond his expectations, who had
I think
9 beautiful daughters and a great son, Kapila Muni.
I think it also, when we are introspective like that, it helps us to even have better friendships with people. We pick more like-minded friends. And then when you're in a circle of like-minded friends, they can, introduce you to somebody else, or you might come in contact with, somebody. Because when you really look at it, a lot of the good relationships, one of your friends or something told you about this person, or it's like somebody who knows you both, it's like,
I think there's one other thing that can complicate relationships, and that comes from how we get programmed by the media in terms of perceptions of what love and relationships are, and also in terms of self-image. That we're trying to look like some image of some images we've seen on the TV or movies and these different romantic conceptions, and we think that's the goal and who we want to be. And so we're trying to be something that we're not. We're trying to be someone, we're not that person. We're, like Popeye the Sailor said, I am what I am, and that's all that I am. So we have to find who we are. And the media can very much undermine our sense of self-esteem and our ability to actually really truly know ourselves. So it's very important to be very cautious about how much media we embrace.
Okay, so step one to healthy sense of self and healthy relationships is delete social media.
well, or be,
Be cautious. Be
what's the word? Realistic.
yeah.
It was so interesting you brought that up because just recently I saw something where a young woman was speaking of someone she had had a bad relationship or a bad experience with, and she kept going back to Beauty and the Beast and how when she was a child she idealized this romance of Beauty and the Beast, and here she is a grown woman and that's still in the back of her mind, and so it kind of set her up for disappointment. So
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, Disney's done more harm than he's done good.
Unfortunately.
It's the fairy tale, It's just like, if I meet my prince, I'll live happily ever after. The reality is, you meet the guy and you'll start the hard work of living happily ever after. That's the reality.
It's like there's this analogy. It's like a good relationship is a lot of the time people they find a good plot of land and they're like, it's got a lot of potential. There's some mountains, there's like a really healthy stream, lots of forest, and like, oh, this would be a great place to build a castle. And you're both standing there admiring the fact that this could be a good castle, and one person goes up and gets all the stones and the tools and is digging away and is building the castle, and the other person's kind of just standing there like, yeah, this is great. It's like, are you building the castle together, or is one person kind of just like standing back hanging, and every now and then they may come put a rock here and put a rock there, but one person is doing all the work. That's and then you got a castle and you're the princess in the castle, but you built it yourself.
Yeah, we tend to go into relationships just hoping that the other partner is going to give us unconditional love, not realizing that we actually have to do a lot of the work to give ourselves love and to reciprocate. It's just not a, lie down on the beach and the grapes get popped in your mouth,
This is actually a question that Tiffany, when we were talking beforehand, was brought up, is the importance of I'll let her ask it, but just in terms of people dealing with people and their traumas, and Prabhu, you had mentioned earlier looking at people's backgrounds and their families, and like what point do you like separate someone from their background and give them the opportunity? And Tiffany, you want to also like I think you had a much
Oh,
better
you
way
were
of
doing
phrasing the
great.
question.
No, I think probably what you're referring to is I had asked about, you know, um, when we do come across those red flags that cannot be moved, and sometimes there are times when we come across a red flag that cannot become a yellow flag. Sometimes there are truly red flags, and how we recognize that and deal with that, situations like that.
You just do that. You recognize it and you move on. You don't have to feel obliged to save that person because people can only work on themselves. We can't change another person. So, one of the, um, first of all, you have to see if the other person sees some need to change. They have to see that. They have to be aware of it, first of all. Then they need to get new information. What can I do differently to fix this? Then they actually have to work on it. And then you have to see over time whether the person can maintain that. So it requires all of those four things to see actual change. So it's not something that's going to happen overnight, and it's not something that you might encourage the other person to be introspective, but ultimately they have to do the work.
Often in situations that are spawned by some kind of severe trauma, the abusive person who manifests those behaviors won't actually fully realize why they're behaving like that. And especially if it's situations like domestic abuse, research shows that often the only thing that will get the abusive person to make the endeavor to change is either the spouse says, either you learn to treat me with respect and compassion, which I deserve, or I'm out of here. Or if there's some outbreak of violence and the police are called and it's court mandated. Because for those persons, that traumatic experience is so severe, they've blocked it out of their mind and they don't want to go anywhere near it.
Dealing with it's too painful.
It's too painful. But there's ways that can be dealt with, that
if they're willing.
If they're willing, and they can be helped.
I mean, it's interesting, Prabhu, because you mentioned, treat me with the respect and compassion that I deserve. I deserve respect and compassion. I am a spirit soul. I am a Vaishnava. I deserve this respect. And I think as women, and it's not just like inherent in us, but it's also we're taught according to our shastra that we're supposed to be humble and tolerant, more humble and tolerant than your husband. So I think like just I don't this is a whole other conversation in itself, but just to be clear that there are some things that you shouldn't have to tolerate.
Yes.
For sure, and you have to know that. And humility doesn't mean you think less of yourself, but just what's it saying? It means you think about yourself less. It doesn't mean you think of yourself as less. So we have to take the whole part of the philosophy. It's not that I'm not a spirit soul and they are. We both are spirit souls. And the problem is that culture kind of raises ladies to have the false self-esteem that when other people think I'm good, I'm good. So if they think I'm pretty, I'm good. If they think I'm humble and meek, then I'm good. Like that. Men fall into the category that more often that I don't know how they put it. Like what I do makes me good. If I work hard, I'm good. If I go for the tough stuff. I'm good. So they get to be hard on themselves and how much they do, and how and other men even perceive them according to how much they do. And then we also have this self-esteem, that negative self-esteem, false self-esteem, that we both genders can fall into, that what I have makes me good. I got the latest version of my iPhone, or got the Nike shoes or the whatever, right? So everybody falls into that, the house on the right street. So we have to not get swayed that these things are what make us good people. We are good just because we're human beings, and that we're part and parcel of Krishna. That's it.
Yeah.
Not because you have all these things, or you do all this, or you act like Miss Humble. You're good because that's who you are. So you deserve self-respect. Mm-hmm. And so as Vaishnavas, we're taught to apply that. Even the spider that's crawling across my keyboard here, he deserves respect. I gotta pick him up and take him outside, right?
There's one little posture of Prabhupada. I think there was some bug in his room, and he opens the window and he says, "Here, I give you the whole world. Go
right.
Enjoy." Yeah, I think it's like the invocation prayer mantra in Ishopanishad. It's like we're all parts and parcels of the complete whole, and we're all perfect and complete parts and parcels because we come from the complete whole. So we shouldn't diminish ourselves or think that we're less valuable, or you're only valuable if you tolerate being treated in a bad way.
Ishopanishad is very interesting because it gives that Sambandha, the nature of the absolute truth, Lord Shri Krishna, and our nature as is part and parcel. And then it, in later verses, I think the 5th and 6th, talks about the abhideya, or the relationship in that function of knowing the absolute truth. And that function in that relationship is that we see all living entities as equal, and we never hate anyone or envy anyone. And that's something as Vaishnavas we have to learn how to practice. And relationships are a very good opportunity to practice that kind of mutual respect and appreciation and patience and tolerance. And I was realizing over the years how sometimes we have to practice being tolerant. But actually, when you develop that sense of love and understanding and compassion, the tolerance becomes tempered with love, and it becomes patience. And it's a lot easier to be patient than to be gritting your teeth and being tolerant. So it's very important that we understand that principle from Ishopanishad, how Krishna is perfect. He's created a perfect creation. He's put us in a perfect situation. If we can take advantage of it and behave according to those Vaishnava understandings and principles, then we'll actually become peaceful and satisfied in ourselves and in our relationships. But often we don't, as Vaishnavas, sometimes we don't know the practical application, or we know it in theory, but we don't make the effort to practice it.
Relationships are the perfect opportunity to practice becoming better Vaishnavas.
And we see that, even if you're not in a marriage, we all, frequent temples. And we see that devotees have such a hard time getting along because they're all such unique people, right? So you're going to get your practice wherever you are.
Okay, I was also...
I think it's like when the stones are rubbing against each other, we're going to smooth each other out.
Yes, that analogy is very apropos. So I was also just recently meditating on the 5th canto, 18th chapter, Lakshmi Devi's prayers to Vishnu, and how she was, within her prayer, she was saying how foolish it is for, anyone to look for a husband, any woman to look for a husband, in this material world, because only Krishna is the ideal husband. And of course, as Prakriti, for men and women, Prakriti is to Krishna's Purusha. So for all of us, the perfect mate is Krishna, and keeping him in the center of all of our relationships, whether it's a marriage or devotee relationships in the temple. The key is remembering who our true husband is.
And that we're all servants of the servant of the servant of the servant. It's very interesting because the word chaste in Sanskrit is sati. And there's one purport where Prabhupada describes how Kunti was known as chaste because she always looked towards Krishna. That's actually the definition of chaste, that one always looks towards Krishna.
There's a very interesting article that was written in the Harmonist magazine. It's attributed to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And it describes how when looking for a spouse, one should only accept someone who they see as a better servant of Krishna than themselves.
I'm glad you chose me.
So how are you going to, how if you both have to do that, it's like seems impossible. But that means you both have to have that mutual humility. And it also goes on to describe that neither husband nor wife have any right or sense of proprietorship over the service or the property of the other, and neither can impose their service upon the other without the other's permission. It's a very beautiful description of, an egalitarian spiritual relationship. And it concludes by saying that this system of Vaishnava marriage has its origin in the worship of the household deity. So like you're saying, Krishna, we love Krishna. He's in our home. He's the boss.
We're all Prakriti and he's the Purusha.
And so we're working together to satisfy the boss of our house here.
It's interesting how when you get in the material world, some people start thinking, we all start thinking we're the Purusha. That's how we got here, right? We wanted to taste it out. So it does take a while to get rid of that, desire to enjoy.
I think you kind of, you've touched on this question, and I think it's just this concept of, I think a lot of, especially younger relationships or modern relationships, fall into this trap of quid pro quo. Like there's a checklist. I've done this much, therefore you need to do this much. And it kind of turns more into housemates trading off chores and, rather than being a relationship of love and support. And, what does it actually mean to be equally invested in each other's well-being?
Exactly that. Exactly
I was
that.
going to say, you answered your own question.
We have to care about each other and serve each other.
And it's never going to be equal every single day.
I remember one time this young couple came up to us, and the young man came forward, and his wife's beside him, and he says, "What's the ideal of a Vedic wife?" And I could see his wife rolling her eyes. So between the lines, I'm reading, "How can I control my wife?" Well, you can't control your wife. If you serve her with love and devotion, she will serve you with love and devotion. And that's what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was implying. It's this mutual reciprocation of service and love. It's natural. And sometimes we have this Vedic ideal that the man is kind of like the controller, and the wife she's submissive, but she's not submissive in the sense that like she's your servant.
Slave.
Prabhupada actually, one time he said, if the husband thinks the wife is his servant, that is not very good. And then he said, if the wife does not serve the husband, that's not very good. Well, you could say, well, she's supposed to serve him. Prabhupada just said that. So what's going on there? And then Prabhupada, he concludes that by saying that if the husband gives the wife all protection, if he makes her feel loved and valued, automatically she's going to want to serve him. So it's a bhakti relationship. It's a reciprocation of love and service. It's not that I have some Vedic edict, you have to cook samosas for me because I got this quote from the Bhagavatam pasted on my forehead that you're supposed to be submissive. That's not Vaishnava.
I think it was Yadavara. He asked Prabhupada one time, should my wife, how do you say it?
Should my wife do whatever I say?
Do whatever I say. And Prabhupada says, you should be so arrogant. So we have these like misconceptions, this lazy idea that, it's just still going to be automatic without any work. And, I think if you really look closely at Vedic women, you'll see how nicely they just kind of like mold the husband, like the lady with the peanuts and the chimpanzee, They just know the art of doing it. Because the man, he comes and he doesn't know he should do this or that, or that you like it like this or that. And they says, oh, if you could just put that over there, it would make me happy. And if you could just do this, and
Yeah.
give him a big hug and whatever. Next thing you know, he's all trained up, right? But we have this like fairy tale. If he loved me, he'd know. He doesn't care. He doesn't this, So it goes from both sides.
Yeah.
He might come in with the wrong perception, misconceptions, and she might also have them. So how to get them both
Yeah.
on the,
It's like the men
functioning healthy stage.
may take this thing, okay, the men like to have the superior position, therefore I should be the controller and you should obey all my edicts. But
You
being
should be
a-
so arrogant.
but being in a superior position, that can also mean that I'm making my spouse feel loved and protected. That I'm making her feel loved and protected in that sense.
It's always about protection. It's
Yeah.
not about lording over.
Yeah.
We have to take the Vaishnava Siddhanta.
I think
There's a nice discussion between Raghunath Das Goswami and Sarup Damodar in Prema Vivarta. And Sarup Damodar asks Raghunath Das Goswami, what are the duties of a Grihastha in Varnashram? And the answer given by Raghunath Das is their duties are to accept those Vedic principles which are conducive to pure bhakti, pure devotional service, and their other duty is to diligently reject those things which are contrary to pure devotional service. And he said, in that way one follows in the footsteps of the great acharyas. So we want to see, is what we're trying to do here actually cultivating a mood of bhakti towards each other being offered to the Supreme Lord. That's our goal. Not just to follow some edicts so I can control you for my satisfaction, because again, as I said in the beginning, the knowledge is meant for the welfare of all, not just for me. So it's very important to have a proper footing in the understanding of Vaishnava theology, what the essence is. It's pure bhakti, what we're looking for.
I think it sounds like the difference between equality versus equity. Equity means we all have to get over the same finish line. So what's it going to take to get everyone there?
Mm-hmm.
And that means that everyone's not going to have equal support or equal resources at all times. Some will need more support, but we all need to get over the finish line together.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And I think equal investment I would imagine, as a single person sitting on this call, that equal investment in a relationship would mean that, my ability to get over that finish line of pure devotional service is as important as yours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and probably to give the example, if you're pushing somebody up the ladder, you're both going up, right?
And when you work together, there's a synergy. And that's Sankirtan means the synergy of mutually glorifying the Lord. And it was interesting, there's some simple research done on synergy. It was done with oxen. So you might have two identical oxen, they're very, very strong. And they pull these sleighs that don't have wheels, so it's just like a sled that drags on the ground. And they can put a great weight on the sleds, and they can see how much the oxen can pull. So you might have one of those oxen by himself pulling the sleigh. He might be able to pull, let's say, 1,000 pounds maximum. That's it. And the other oxen, maybe he also can only pull exactly 1,000 pounds maximum. So you take those two oxen together, you put them in what's called a double yoke, pulling one sleigh. You can take that same 1,000 pounds, add the other 1,000 pounds, 2,000 pounds. You can add another 500 pounds, and then all of a sudden, miraculously, somehow they're pulling more than the combined weight of what they could do individually. So that's called synergy. It's kind of a mystic principle that when you work together, the energy actually increases. So that's one value of marriage, that if we can actually work together in that way towards our goals and values, it becomes very, very fruitful.
And we'll actually see how much we make personal growth, just by having to work through those things where you have to ask the other person to help you with something, or you have to help them with something, or you have to work out how we're going to get through this. That's where we make all our growth in life. Then you can pull that 2,500 pounds instead of that 1,000 that you used to.
I'm I'm just thinking, that, it's, you need to have someone who is convinced that they need to be in a partnership to be able to be, so that they're equally committed, not someone who thinks that they're fine pulling 1,000 pounds alone.
Well, then why would they get married? It's just that some people they want to marry so the other person will do the work that they're supposed to do for themselves.
So they want to sit on the sled.
Yeah.
I just also, what I was thinking of is this trap that women fall into of, he's such a nice brahmachari, therefore he would be a nice husband. He's such a good devotee. He's happy pulling his 1,000 pounds alone. He doesn't want to be in a yoke and pull a little bit extra and be able
Yeah.
to pull extra.
Very often, people are brahmacharis because, well, they want to be. Though, just because a person can be Krishna conscious in that situation doesn't mean that they have relationship skills. It doesn't mean that they want to get married. So you have to find out, first of all, if they want to. And you can't just automatically read, oh, they're a great devotee, they're going to be a good husband. It's not, a given. But I do see that. And then the ladies get so disappointed and the guy has no idea.
Well, I
We,
think
we gave a seminar once in one country in the temple room, and the curtains were closed and the deities were being changed. And after the seminar,
Brahmachari peeks his head out from
yeah,
behind the
brahmachari,
curtain.
the brahmachari came off the altar, and he said, "My gosh, I was just listening to this." He said, "I want to buy your book. I just realized I'm preaching all wrong." He was preaching the deep dark well stuff.
I I've often I've heard that, when Prabhupada actually said, that the Shastra was often preached by men to men, and therefore it's presented in a particular way. But we need to have a bit of broad-mindedness to understand the principles behind it when we're preaching to people who are not necessarily men, or people who are not necessarily going to be brahmachari their whole life.
Or who don't understand the Vedic context.
And again, it's reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
All capital
That's
letters.
important. All. Everyone.
And that's why it's really important to see Prabhupada's application.
Yeah, he accepted everyone.
And he treated women so nicely. And, you can see that he understood the essence. And if we have anartas in our heart and we read the scripture with those, anarta glasses, we're going to get a wrong conclusion out of the scriptures. Various things that we come with, we tend to read the scripture with that light. So that's why it's really important to have good association of people who can practically apply the scriptures in that, nuanced Vaishnava way.
I think that is actually the a benefit of the brahmachari ashram, is they do learn things like self-control and how to make certain good decisions, based on Vaishnava principles. It's the application, I think, that gets lost when they're staying in that ashram for so very long and not taught how to transition out of it and apply everything that they've learned.
I also was just something, that I realized when I was reading Bhagavatam. Actually, because we know Prabhupada's name, we always say A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Bhaktivedanta specifically means that one who understands the true purport of the Vedas. And Prabhupada is our Bhaktivedanta. So it's really important to look at how he has presented and how he applied the scriptures. He's given us his example. He's our acharya.
For sure. And so we have to be very careful that, um, people, we've all come in contact more with Indian culture. And Prabhupada would even sometimes put down Indian culture because it wasn't really doing the Vaishnava behavior. So we have to be able to distinguish, between Indian today culture and what is Vaishnavism. And so, just like with all the religions or all the cultures, we have to be able to sort out, what is Vaishnava in this? What do I accept and what do I reject? So, I see that nowadays we're kind of stuck on this Vedic, but we're forgetting the Vaishnava. Vaishnava is the true essence of Vedics, but all the periphery stuff in the Vedas, Prabhupada didn't stress. So he took out the Vaishnava essence, and we have to do the same thing.
And I think it's really important for women today, to to understand that it's okay if you don't fit into that traditional Vedic role or mold. Our goal is to be Vaishnav, and whatever
Almost
is
nobody
going to help
does.
you. I think thank you for saying that.
Vedic role as Vanapras would be, Vanapras would let their hair grow long into dreadlocks. Sometimes they wouldn't even cut their fingernails or bathe, and
Tree bark.
wear tree bark. I don't know if we were dressed like that, looking like that. I don't know if you'd want us on your video.
But definitely, I think that last point of extracting the Vaishnava essence
Yeah.
is the most important thing. And using whatever is going to help us get to that goal of pure devotional service is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And a part of our introspection is being honest with ourselves. What's going to help me get to that goal?
Yeah. For sure. And we're all unique individuals.
And I think also, especially by, developing that sincere introspection in your devotion and sincerity in your spiritual practices, you're going to get the intuition to know from within your heart and even to say gut feelings of what's a red flag and what's a yellow flag.
And this is green.
Yeah.
Listening to this lecture is a green flag. So I think we want to wrap up now. We've been going for a bit over 90 minutes now. You've got, there are so many of the questions we've gone through today, or topics, they can be expanded so much more. And, you do have quite a bit of resources on your website. And I think you've got some courses coming up as well.
Yes, our website is VaishnavFamilyResources.org. It pops up pretty quickly when you type it in. And we do have a Grihastha course online being presented through Radha Desh Bhaktivedanta College, starting in 2 weeks. So you can look out for advertisements or just go to the Bhaktivedanta College website. So that's happening. If you speak Russian, we have an ongoing premarital course going there for the next 4 weeks in Siberia. So we have those. We also do, if you have a group of people who want, a premarital or a marriage course, just contact us and we can design it to your specifications.
And you also,
So,
oh, I'm sorry, you also do couples counseling as well, right? Is that
Yeah, we do specialize in premarital education. We're trying to make a culture in ISKCON where when someone's getting together and they're pretty sure they're, headed towards marriage, we take them for a 5-session premarital skills building training so they have the skills that they need when they go into a relationship. So we're trying to make that the culture of ISKCON, that before marriage we make sure we got the toolkit. So we do a lot of that. Many of the gurus in ISKCON, when the disciples go for blessings, they say, I'm only giving you blessings if you take the premarital education. Otherwise, I don't know if I can bless this marriage.
Prabhupada gave an instruction to that effect in 1971. Devotee Bhagavan requested blessings for some marriage, and Prabhupada's reply was, there's too much separation happening in our society. I will only grant my blessings for marriages if the couples are first duly counseled by some senior devotees. He said, then my blessings are there, otherwise not. And that letter just kind of got filed away in the archives and everyone forgot about it. And we started our initiative with the Grihastha Vision Team. We came across that letter. We thought, yeah, well, this is Prabhupada's endorsement. He wants this, so let's do it.
So, and it's way nicer to work on preventative than to cure later. But we do occasionally take couples counseling clients also. But my real love is the other end, because it's just so nice to work with.
Yeah. We
no messes yet.
It's a program that helps couples.
Yeah, prevention. Yeah.
Helps couples discover that they have a lot of things in common, but they also helps them discover they do have differences.
And how are we going to negotiate this?
Yeah, and so we just coach them, and you can learn how to discuss these differences in ways that are constructive, non-confrontational. So there's a lot of skills that are involved in helping them develop healthy relationships, and it's always very much appreciated.
So someone who's not willing to come to the premarital course is a red flag, and the person who is willing to come with you is a green flag.
Yep. Exactly. If someone isn't willing to grow in their relationship, what are you doing with them?
right?
And I do believe you also have, training available for people who would like to be mentors.
Yes,
Or if you
we've been
see-
doing quite a lot of that lately. Yeah. So if you're, being married, we like to train couples who've been married 7 or 8 years or more, and you have a reasonably happy. Nobody has a perfect relationship, and you would like to help others and do that premarital education in your area. We're very happy to train you. Just contact us.
or if you know someone who is,
encourage them.
is a good example. Then encourage them to possibly join this training.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you so much. Hopefully we will have many more of these conversations, because there's so many points where I wanted to go so much deeper into them, and I was like, we've only got like a limited amount of time here. But I'm so grateful to you for giving us this time, and hopefully a lot more devotees will be turning to your resources, and we'll be building stronger, healthier Vaishnava relationships.
Right, which makes for strong communities. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, and happy Valentine's Day to everyone.
It goes the other way.
Can see he's never celebrated a Valentine. But thank you so much.
Wednesday.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.